Does this look familiar to you? Look closer. Yes, it does, doesn't it? It's methyl diethanolamine, MDEA. And a lot of you watching are probably using this amine right now or considering using it. Well, why is MDEA everywhere? Everywhere we go, we see MDEA. Every vendor is pushing it. Every designer is modeling their plant based on MDEA. Is it as good as they say it is? It can be good, for sure, but it also can be very, very bad. You need to know the pros and cons of MDEA. We are doing a two-part video series. In this video, part one, we're going to discuss the pros of MDEA, okay? What's good about it? Why is there so much hype around it? So stay tuned to hear the positive side of MDEA.
Welcome to the Experts Network.
Everybody, welcome back to the Experts Network. Good to be here. My name is Ben Spooner. I'm a senior process engineer with Amine Experts, and today's topic is regarding MDEA, the pros and cons. What inspired this topic today was a lot of questions we've been having from people who are more recent MDEA users. They have changed from amines such as DEA or MEA to MDEA. They bought into the very persuasive sales pitch, perhaps by a vendor or in-house SME, saying that MDEA is so great. They switched to MDEA and they find out maybe it's not as great as they were expecting it to be. Well, there's a lot to know about MDEA. It can be great. You just need to understand how to operate it, and you need to know its pros and cons. So we're going to do a two-part video series here. We're going to do part one today on the pros of MDEA. We are Canadian, so we're optimistic people. We always start with the good, okay? But then in part two, we're going to talk about some of the disadvantages or some of the things you need to be more aware of when you're operating your MDEA plant in order to be successful. So we have a bit of a pros and cons list we put together here, just some top bullet point form pros and cons. Number one, pro, does not degrade when you are contacting that MDEA with CO2 or COS, which is fantastic. It means you don't need to have a reclaimer on your amine. You don't build up degradation products like other amines can do. So that's a huge advantage right there. Number two, MDEA slips CO2. So if you're a plant that's got a lot of CO2 coming in and you don't need to remove it, absolutely leave it in the gas. All kinds of problems can arise once your amine bonds with that CO2. So let's just not have that happen in the first place. So number two advantage of MDEA is CO2 slip. Number three, if you operate it at the proper concentration, which is 45 to 50%, okay, 45 to 50% strength. That's where you want your MDEA. Take advantage of its ability to run at high strengths. You can now hold quite a bit more H2S in that amine compared to primary and secondary amines, compared to MEA and DEA. So you wind up with a lower circulation rate, and there's a ton of advantages to that. And then finally, the fact that you can run the amine at 50-55% is in of itself an advantage. A lot of amines would be corrosive at those high concentrations, but not MDEA. So those are four major advantages of MDEA, which we're going to discuss in this video. The next video is going to be the disadvantages, and you cannot ignore these. These are very, very important. Number one, MDEA foams way easier. It foams easier. It takes less contamination to make it foam. So you got to be very, very careful with your care and treatment of your MDEA. You need good inlet separation, probably coalescing filter. You need good filtration on the amine, activated carbon bed, all that good stuff. It is also more corrosive when we have heat-stable amine salts building up in the MDEA. So MDEA by itself not corrosive, but once you form heat-stable salts in there, then it becomes corrosive faster than other amines. Okay, so you got to be on the ball with your amine analysis. Third, it's way more sensitive to lean loading and temperature compared to other amines. MDEA is very unforgiving when it comes to your operating parameters. You can't just let the amine temperature get high on a hot summer afternoon. You'll go off spec on H2S. So lots to know there. And then finally, MDEA really starts to lose its luster when we are talking about liquid-liquid treatment. If we're treating LPGs or olefins or NGLs, okay, there you got to really back down on your MDEA concentration. You can't run at that 45 to 50% like you would like to. You got to run a lot lower, and that dramatically that takes away a lot of the potential advantages of MDEA. So that'll be in part 2 of this video series. Let's focus on the pros for today. It's a happy, gorgeous summer afternoon, so we're going to talk about advantages. Number 1, no degradation, and this is huge. A lot of the very, very large amine projects we've been working on over in the Middle East, these are the largest amine plants in the world. They are purposely going with MDEA because they will not need to install a reclaimer. Reclaimers take huge amount of energy and are a nightmare to operate. Anyone who's operated a thermal reclaimer will tell you they have a lot of negatives associated. So no degradation. But just be careful, guys. The term reclaiming, that can mean removing degradation products. It can also mean removing heat-stable amine salts. And heat-stable amine salts, as I kind of mentioned in the intro, you do need to reclaim out of the amine more frequently with MDEA. So when we say you don't need a reclaimer, we mean we don't need to remove degradation products because they don't form in an MDEA system. Okay, number 2 advantage is that ability to slip CO2. So here we have an MDEA molecule, and if we compare that to our friend DEA, the big difference, I need multiple hands here. The big difference is this guy right here. Hydrogen, labile hydrogen. DEA has that, okay? This guy, he wants to react with CO2. So what we've done on MDEA is we've just simply replaced him. MDEA and DEA are the exact same molecule, except we've got rid of the hydrogen and replaced it with a methyl group. This does not react with CO2. So there's in fact no direct pathway for MDEA to react with CO2. That reaction that does happen between primary amines or secondary amines with CO2 to form that carbamate is now no longer. Instead, all we have is CO2 reacting and dissolving in water. That will happen, and that forms carbonic acid. Once that occurs, the MDEA does then react with the carbonic acid. But that CO2 water reaction is fairly slow. We can control it. We can manipulate it. And we can more or less prevent it from happening, at least to a large degree. And in this case, the CO2 will just go right through the absorber and out with the treated gas. So that's a massive advantage to MDEA. If you don't need to pick up the CO2, don't. You can see here we've kind of compared the H2S removal versus CO2 removal of a DEA plant above here versus an MDEA below. The H2S removal is about the same. Again, assuming we have our lean loading and our amine temperature under control and our circulation rate set properly, you're not going to see a huge difference between DEA and MDEA on that H2S removal profile, but there's a huge difference in CO2. Whereas DEA removes the CO2 mostly in the bottom half of the absorber, and you wind up with very little leaving the top of the absorber. On MDEA, it's almost a linear, removal of CO2. You remove about the same amount of CO2 in the bottom of the tower as you do on the top. And it's because contact time and water content has a lot to do with how much CO2 removed. So those are parameters we can manipulate, okay? Slip the CO2 if you have that ability. Now, how big of an advantage that ability to slip CO2 comes right down to how much CO2 you have in the first place, okay? So we did some comparisons here of various gas plants and refineries that we've worked at. You can see this gas plant on top with 9% CO2 and only 4% H2S. Well, if we compare DEA to MDEA, there is clear advantage to using MDEA there. Whereas DEA will pick up both H2S and CO2. It means it needs to have a very high circulation rate to do that, and we have a lot of high regeneration temperature. Whereas with the MDEA, which slips a lot of that CO2, we no longer need that circulation rate, and correspondingly, we no longer need that regeneration energy. So, big advantage when you have lots of CO2. The advantage kind of decreases a little bit as we go to lower and lower CO2 levels. When we have a plant that's mostly H2S and just a little bit of CO2 or no CO2, there is still somewhat advantage of MDEA if we run it up at 50% strength, because we wind up with a lower circulation rate. And that lower circulation rate, again, directly leads to a lower regeneration energy need. However, it's not as dramatic as on the high CO2 plants. So when you're trying to weigh how much energy savings there are by converting from DEA to MDEA, for example, you really need to take into account the feed gas composition. Okay, next advantage, again, non-corrosive. Non-corrosive. 50-55% MDEA, no issue, okay? It's not like MEA, where we don't like to see it go above about 20%. It's not like DEA, where about 35 to 38% is about as high as you want to go. A lot of reasons why those two amines can become corrosive at higher strengths. MDEA doesn't have those. So crank that strength up. Don't be worried about the amine itself corroding your steel. That's about it for advantages of MDEA. It's all those things we listed, plus it's readily available, plus a lot of people are already using it for their tail gas treatment, and it's easy to have the whole system all on MDEA. But there are definitely disadvantages, which we're going to cover in the next video. So thank you for joining us today on the pros of MDEA. Thank you very much for helping us reach over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's been a big goal of ours for a long time, so we appreciate your guys' support. Please keep the suggestions for more videos coming. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you right here on the next Experts Network.